All right, let's get started with today's lesson. In today's lesson, we have two things that we're going to take a look at, our activator and exploring tropical climates. You will see that on your home page, your sub for Wednesday comes right up. We're going to close our computers while we watch the video, and then once the video is over, you will simply open back up and come to your sub Wednesday folder where everything is linked. First, we're going to start out with our activator. Causes of climate activator. This goes along with what we did yesterday. So when you choose to begin your activator, you will see the causes of climate, latitude, elevation, ocean and wind currents, closest to large bodies of water and terrain. The things that we went over yesterday, match those to its correct definition and submit that. Okay, so that is our activator. Okay, going back to my home page. On my home page, you'll see that you have a link to exploring tropical climates. So we're going to look at tropical climates. I am going to actually play the videos for you in just a moment via this video. So you'll watch the videos about tropical rainforest inside of this video. So first, I want us to take a look at some of the characteristics of tropical wet climates. So when we go to tropical wet climates, those are the reds in the Köppen classification. And so basically your tropical wet is found along the equator. They often call those equatorial because they do fall in that. They have a very constant warm temperature and regular rainfall. And then you also have what are known as your tropical wet dry climate. That's found within the tropics. So the 23.5 degree north or south, your Tropic of Cancer and your Tropic of Capricorn. And tropical wet has two seasons. They have a wet season where it rains, and they have a dry season where they have periods of drought. Okay, so where is the tropical wet climate usually located? They're at the equator down to your 25 degree mark, okay, or 23.5. So some areas that we typically think of when we think of tropical wet: Brazil, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is where rainforests are, Indonesia, Philippines. It receives direct sunlight throughout the year, and the tilt of the earth that creates season doesn't affect this area because it never tilts away from the direct sunlight. Okay, so here you can see some of the things that take place during this tropical climate. Again, your basins or your rainforests are found. What is the climate? What is it like? High temperatures all year, lots of rain. Here you can see Manaus, Brazil, in the tropical climate. It's one of the hottest places found in the world. You have hot temperatures in your tropical wet climate. They stay the same, the average around 80 degrees. Feels hotter because of the humidity. Humidity is usually very high, and because of the humidity, you know, it feels hotter than the 80 degrees. Usually not higher than 80 degrees at night, and usually not lower than 68 degrees. The temperature is warm year-round. It receives about 100 to 300 inches of rain per year, depending on what area you're in. As we move down, you can see talking more about the Amazon in Brazil, how it can be hot and sticky. That's that humid feeling that we have. They have thousands and thousands of plants and animals known to this area, many of them unknown. There are things like sugar canes, soybeans, rice, sweet potatoes, fruits, bananas, mangoes. All of those are things that come from the tropics. Your cocoa beans, your coffee, your tea, all come from tropic areas. And here you can see some bananas being grown. So some problems that come from the tropical zone, the climate that's here, it's a breeding ground for insects. They like to go in the pools of water that were created by the rains. And this is one place where mosquitoes are often found, and then that means they can spread diseases. Okay, here you can see the mosquito. Hurricanes and monsoons are also very frequent in this area, and so people have to prepare their homes to survive, their businesses to survive, and so on from the strong winds and heavy rains that are received from hurricanes and monsoons. And then we're not going to do this part right now where we're reading about Manaus, Brazil. We're going to do that in the later part. So that's a little bit of an overview of the tropical wet climate. And then I'm going to go back to my home page where I began exploring tropical climates. So we looked at the characteristics. You are then going to complete the tropical wet climate zone acrostic. So when you click here, it's going to take you to puzzle.org. And when you come to puzzle.org, it has a list of clues here to the right and your words that you fill in here. So remember how I've taught you to use your Control F key to help you while you're in the content. So once you have finished that, you are going to save as an image right here and then download that so that you can turn it in on the appropriate assignment. Okay. Then we're going to watch this video about tropical monsoons and savannas, a short part of it, and complete some characteristics of tropical monsoons. So this is your wet dry area. This is the area known as the savanna. So it has two seasons. It has a wet season and a dry season. So you find these areas a lot in Africa, Brazil, India. So basically within this area, you're talking from stretched out from the equator down through your Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 north or south of the equator. So when we're talking about rain here, there are some places that have received as much as 1,000 inches of rain a year. So the wet season, you're going to have at least 25 inches. But in your dry season, you're looking closer to 4 inches, which is less than 10, which categorizes a place as, desert if it has less than 10 inches a year. So that's definitely a drastic difference, 25 to 4, or in a monsoon area that has like 1,000. And the record was in Madagascar. They had 71 inches of rain in one day. So this place right here, this Masarnaram, India, is considered the wettest place on earth. It receives 467 inches of rain in a year. We call these seasonal monsoons. They are winds that bring in incredible rainfall, a dangerous amount of rain. Okay. So the tropical monsoon climate, it is in southern and central regions of America and southeast and southern parts of Asia, Australia, and Africa. It has monsoon winds, which change directions. And for this part, the driest month of the tropical monsoon climate is after the winter solstice. Okay. And rainfall is usually less than 2.4 inches, but can get higher than 3.9 inches. Tropical monsoon climate includes Jakarta, which is in Indonesia, Florida, the Ivory Coast, Venezuela, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Australia, and Brazil. Okay, so this is our tropical monsoon and savanna weather. Okay, so when we come back to our main page here, exploring tropical climates, you will see that you also have a tropical wet dry climate fill in the gap. And when you choose this fill in the gap, you'll see here that some words are missing when you are finished. Okay. The best way to save this is either to snip your answers or to print what you have finished. And by printing it, it will allow you to save it as a PDF. Okay, so that is your fill in the gap on puzzle.org. So that brings us to our next part, which is our third stop, tropical climate vegetation. And if I overview some of the information here, so this is talking mainly about your rainforests and your savannas. So there is 6% of the earth has tropical rainforests, which produce 40% of our oxygen that we need to survive. But it's full of all different kinds of trees. It has extraordinary animals, it is often called the jewels of the earth because it's so jam-packed with so many different plants, animals, and natural medicines that can be found here. So some of the plants and animals that you'll see, there's hundreds of different kinds of trees here. They said that in a 25-acre plot in Borneo, there can be as many as 700 different kinds of trees. That's quite a few. One of the trees is the kapok tree. It's the biggest in Central America. It grows up to about 13 feet each year, and it has a really wide base on it, and inner fiber in the seeds. So here's the seeds. And so they use the trunk for making canoes. They use this fiber for bedding, and they also use oil from the seeds to make soap. So that's the fruit of the kapok tree. You have fig trees that wrap themselves around and climb up to get to the top. You have bamboo in Asia that can grow 40 to 80 feet in height and 3 inches in diameter. It sucks up water to help with flooding, so it can help prevent flooding. They use this to make furniture, paper, fishing rods. These are mangrove swamps, and these mangrove trees actually make their roots outside of the water, okay, so that when the tide goes out, it looks like the trees are on stilts. You also have liana vines, which are what Tarzan used to swing from branch to branch on. Those actually cling to trunks and grow up towards the light, so it makes ways for animals to get around, or humans. You also have some beautiful plants like the orchids. You have water lilies that feed off of the minerals in the water. You have pitcher plants like this one. It attracts insects. It usually has like a sweet nectar, but it has like a rotten meat smell. And when the animals, or the insects come in, it just snatches them up with their gooey stuff that's inside of them. This Rafflesia plant is like one of the biggest flowers there is, but it smells like rotten meat, and it produces a flower. It's also known as the corpse flower and found in Indonesia. It can be 3 feet wide, this one flower. So it's a very heavy flower, and it doesn't have a long lifespan. So it lasts just for like 5 days, and then it disintegrates into a slimy mess. 80% of all the world's food originally came from the rainforest, but we have mimicked many of these and made plantations. So avocados, coconuts, orange, lemons, grapefruit, bananas, pineapples, mangoes, tomatoes, all of those are rainforest plants. But as I said, we have replicated these, but you also have nuts like cashew and macadamia, spices like vanilla, ginger, cinnamon, pineapple. Here's your cashews, your avocados. So a lot of these things have come from the rainforest. Rubber trees have come, and now we replicate those. So basically what you see happening here, they've grown the rubber trees, and this is showing how they tap it. They take this latex out, and then this latex is used to make like tires, gloves, balloons. It's called rubber tapping. We also have things coming out of here like ginger. You can find this in your local grocery store. It's the root of a plant. People use it to make ginger tea. They use it to ginger ale. Ginger is used for like indigestion if your tummy's hurting, and also to help you when you have a cold. The savanna, because they have the 2 different seasons, mostly what you see here are grasses and shrubs and a few trees. So not as wealthy in plants as what you're going to see in the rainforest. They do have a tree called the acacia, and they are deciduous, meaning they shed their leaves during the dry period, and so it allows them to survive. They also have broad trunks, which allow them to store water so that during the drought they have some water to live through that dry time. They can grow 6 to 12 feet tall. They have a lot of grasses there that are coarse and grow up to 15 feet. One of the grasses is the elephant grass, and it gets very large. And here you can see a picture of what the tropical savanna would look like with its grasses, very coarse, dry, and then your acacia trees are these trees here. Okay, so these are the plants and animals, or the vegetation found in the tropical climate zone. All right, so that just leaves us a few videos to watch. So the first one I want to show is the overview of tropical climates.
Tropical climates are one of the major climates on Earth. They cover about 1/3 of the Earth's land surface. Tropical climates are categorized by high temperatures all year round, and they get lots and lots of rain. Tropical climates are sometimes called equatorial climates because they are located close to the equator. Some tropical climates include the Amazon Basin in Brazil, the Congo Basin in Africa, and many of the forests from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. Tropical rainforests don't have 4 seasons like many other land climates. Instead, they have a wet season and a dry season. Many of the world's rainforests are located in tropical climates. These warm and moist forests are the most diverse land habitats on Earth. They're home to millions of different kinds of plants and animals, many of which are still to be discovered. Sadly, tropical rainforests are being cut down for timber or burned and cleared to make way for farms, roads, and cities. It's really important that we protect these tropical forests so the millions of plants and animals that live there will be around forever.
Here we have the tropical climate, the tropical rainforest climate. So let's take a look at this. We're not going to watch the whole thing. So let me scroll forward.
Imagine a place with no... A place where it rains almost every day.
Imagine a place with no seasons, where every day is like the last. A place where it rains almost every day. A place of constant heat and humidity.
Plants and animals than anywhere else.
Some might call such a place hell,
Because of the oxygen
while for others it might be paradise. It is a place on Earth with more species of plants and animals than anywhere else. Because of the oxygen generated by its millions of trees, it has been dubbed the lungs of the world. You have arrived at the band encircling the center of the Earth. Welcome to the tropical rainforest.
Our journey through Earth's climate zones here, because and it is not a wet
We
climate.
begin our journey through Earth's climate zones here, because here is the very center of the Earth, the equator.
And as it
And
does
is no
so,
accident
it causes hot air to
and
rise.
wet climate exists on the equator,
Moisture
because it is here that the sun is strongest, striking the Earth directly at 90 degrees. And as it does so, it causes hot air to rise, pulling in moisture from the surrounding
so that
seas.
moisture precipitates out into
As
vats.
this humid air rises up into the high atmosphere, it cools. but cool air cannot hold onto moisture like warm air can,
Central position
and so
on the
force
equator
precipitates out
that
into
little
vast,
to no change in
towering
temperature.
thunderclouds, which then finally release as torrential rain. And it is
Colder
because
and
of its
hotter.
central position on the
Life on the
equator
equator is
that
about
little to
watching
no
the sun
change in temperature
drift
is
away.
experienced throughout the year, while more northerly and southerly latitudes experience the colder and hotter seasons. Life on the
The
equator
thermals
is
that
about
produce
watching the
all that
sun
rain
drift slightly north and slightly south of being directly overhead. In any position, it is still beating down, producing that heat, and the thermals that produce all that rain. There is more complexity to this, of course. Some areas on the equator experience wet and dry seasons, but we'll cover and explain this more in the following video, which concerns the tropical monsoon and tropical savanna. So, where in the world can we find these
most
forests?
notably Brazil,
Well,
Peru,
naturally, they're all within the
Colombia,
tropical
Ecuador,
zone.
Venezuela,
The
and the
most famous of
Guyanas.
these is, of course,
The Pacific
the
coast
Amazon
of
River
Colombia
basin
on the other
of
side
South
of the Andes
America,
Mountains is
which
also
stretches
home to
across
this
many
climate.
countries, most notably
And then there's the
Brazil,
Congo
Peru,
Basin of Africa,
Colombia, Ecuador,
mostly
Venezuela,
within the
and
country of
Guyanas.
Congo, Zaire,
The Pacific
but also
coast of
including
Colombia on
parts
the
of
other side of the
Uganda.
Andes Mountains is also home
The
to
last
this
of the
climate.
three main
And then there's the Congo Basin of Africa, mostly within the country of Congo, Zaire,
along with New
but
Guinea
also including
and the
parts
southern
of
and
Uganda.
eastern stretches of the
The
Philippines.
last of the three main
Many.
rainforest zones is in Southeast Asia, with almost all of Indonesia and Malaysia falling within this climate type, along with New Guinea and the southern and eastern stretches of the
I
Philippines.
know you're all dying to see some temperature and
Mainland
rainfall
and
graphs,
Pacific
right?
experience the same climate,
Well.
including the Solomon Islands, Fiji, and French Polynesia.
Remarkably the same.
So,
Well,
enough
almost
chatter.
unchanging temperature,
I know you're all dying to see some temperature and rainfall graphs, right?
dry
Well,
seasons.
here they are. Across three continents and oceans, all remarkably the same. High and almost unchanging temperature throughout the year, and high rainfall throughout the year with no dry seasons. We should mention something about the graph of Hilo in Hawaii. At almost 20 degrees north of the equator, it's pretty far from it,
Still
and yet
wet,
it still
known as the trade
possesses a
winds.
very wet
Blowing
and warm
moist
climate. The year-round rainfall is due to it being on the windward side of the large volcanoes on the big island of Hawaii. Northeasterly winds, known as the trade
There are
winds,
some other parts
blow
of the
moist,
tropics
warm
where this
air off
pattern
the
is
Pacific
found.
all year round. And when this moist
Of
air
Central
hits the
America.
mountainous slopes, it rises, cools, and dumps huge amounts of rain upon the city. There are some other parts of the tropics where this pattern is found, including the Caribbean coasts of Central America
episode.
and some Caribbean islands, including the
Explaining the
Dominican
patterns
Republic
of wet
and
and
Puerto
dry
Rico,
seasons in
as
other
well as
parts
some
of the
eastern
tropics.
coastal areas of Brazil and Madagascar.
All right, so that is
There will be more on the trade
all we're
winds
gonna
in
watch
the next
this
few
part
episodes.
of,
They are key to also
the tropical
explaining the
rainforest
patterns of wet and
climate.
dry seasons in
And
other parts of
there
the
is
tropics.
one more, the tropical monsoons and savannas. And again, we're not going to watch all of this. So let me cue it.
Of us in the developed world. The seasons are defined by
For so many of us in the developed world, the seasons are defined by
that live in
temperature,
the tropics.
the freshness of
Seasons are
spring,
marked by
the heat of
presence
summer, the chill of autumn, and the cold of winter.
the annual coming
But for
of rain
billions of
and
people on
months
our
of
planet
drought.
that live in the tropics,
Life
the seasons are marked by the presence and absence of rain. The annual coming of the rains after months of drought, with the renewal of life from
This is
the
the
giving
domain.
water. And then,
wet.
after months of rain and cloud, the sun reborn into blue skies as the next dry season begins. This is the domain of the tropical wet and dry climates. This is the tropical monsoon and the tropical savanna.
Tropical rainforest climate zone. Where rain most of
In the last episode, we looked at the tropical rainforest climate zone, where rain occurs
rain
throughout
that
the year.
falls in a year Determines whether
Most of the lands of the tropics experience some kind of drought or reduction in rainfall during the year. The severity of this drought and the total amount of rain that falls in a year determines whether it comes under the classification of monsoon or savanna. Monsoon areas are overall
tropics,
wetter
the sun will be
or have a
directly
shorter,
above
drier
you.
season, while savannas are drier overall or have a
And it's
longer,
the sun.
drier season. So what accounts for this variation in rain? In the tropics, the sun will be directly above you at noon at some point in the year. And if the sun is directly above, it means it's heating that part of the earth more than any other. And that means rising air,
There is very
pulling in
little
of
wind
moist
in
air from the
compass
surrounding
and
seas and oceans, and lots of rain. The band of the earth where these winds come together has for centuries been called the doldrums by sailors, because there is very little wind at this confluence and could lead to weeks or even months of being stranded in a sailing ship. The rains follow this band as it tracks the sun above and below the equator throughout the year. In July, it's summer in the north, so this band is located to the north of the
By the
equator,
same sailor
while in
for centuries
January,
past.
it is at its furthest
They were
extent
sunk.
south of the equator.
By
The winds which come into this convergence
tropical wet
are
and dry
called the
climate
trade
zones.
winds,
These winds
named
switch
by those
directions
same sailors
throughout
of
the
centuries
year,
past,
depending upon
since they
whether
were
the
so
doldrums
predictable
are to the
that sailing
north or
ships could
south.
count on them to ply their
When they
trade.
originate from the ocean,
In the tropical
they bring
wet and
moisture
dry
and
climate
rain.
zones, these winds
But when they
switch
come from the
direction
land,
throughout the
they
year,
are bone dry
depending
and
upon
bring
whether
nothing.
the doldrums are to the north or south.
So what kind of
When
landscapes
they
do we find in
originate from
these
the ocean,
regions?
they bring in moisture
Depending on the
and rain.
severity or longevity
When
of the
they
dry
come from the
season,
land,
we can
they are
find
bone
anything
dry
from tropical
and bring
forests
nothing.
to open grasslands.
So
On
what
the
kind
wetter side of the
landscapes do we
spectrum,
find in these regions?
we find much of the jungle of the
Depending on
Amazon
severity
and Southeast
longevity
Asia,
of the dry season,
but such forests
we
do
can
not
find
have
anything
as
from
rich a
tropical forests
biodiversity
to
as
open
tropical
grasslands.
rainforest.
On the wetter side of the spectrum, we
Yeah.
find much of the jungle of the Amazon and Southeast Asia. But such forests do not have as
Grassland,
rich a biodiversity
savanna
as the
itself.
tropical rainforest.
The tropical
As the rainfall reduces the further out we go, we find less dense, drier forests until finally
tropical
we have
rainforest
open
is
grassland,
exchanged with
the savanna
tropical
itself. The tropical grasslands of
Tropical.
Africa are perhaps some of the most iconic landscapes in the world.
grass that feeds
Here,
their
the
vast
biodiversity of the tropical rainforest is exchanged for huge numbers of large herbivorous
don't want to let all
animals
that
that
water
track for
food
hundreds
go
of
to
miles
waste.
each year to follow the
Much of
rains
Southeast
and the green grass that feeds their vast numbers. And they themselves are followed by world-famous predator species who don't want to let all that walking food go to waste.
One reason why Asian nations have
Much of
such
Southeast Asia and India is given over to the production of rice, which excels in this climate, producing 2 or more harvests each year. Such productivity is one reason why Asian nations have such large populations
While in West
compared to
Africa,
other
we
parts
find
of the
much
world. In Central America, the Caribbean and Brazil, sugarcane is the
savanna
most
climate
famous of world
for that
crops
most favored of
that has
foods.
dominated these
chocolate.
areas for centuries. While in West Africa, we
Well-
find much of the land given over
All right,
to
so
cocoa
that's all we're
production.
going to watch of
So
that one
one
as
could say
well as a
that we are
class.
thankful
Please
for
feel
the savanna
free
climate
to go
for that
back
most
and
favored
watch
of foods,
these
chocolate.
in their entirety if you so desire. They're very informative. It gives you good information about what's going on in the tropical climate zones. So you are finishing up. We just went over all of the content. So now you are on this Exploring Tropical Climate Zones where you are going to complete this tropical wet climate zone acrostic. You are going to complete this tropical wet dry climate fill in the gap. And you are going to fill out this vegetation of tropical climates crossword puzzle. Each of those, when you click on them, has a place for those to be turned in. So if it offers you the opportunity to save it, or file save as a PDF and turn it into its appropriate spot. All right, that's what you have on the agenda for today. I went over all the content. You just have the activities to do.